Our movie starts with a guy named Giddy, and he's telling us the story of his life, from the time he was a little kid to how he managed to change everything and accomplish something no one had done before. Right off the bat, Giddy explains that he didn't grow up in a normal household. While other kids were raised by parents dreaming of them becoming doctors or engineers, Giddy was raised in a house full of thieves and scammers. Yeah, not exactly your average upbringing. We go back to when Giddy was a child, and he's literally making a bomb, using matches and a bunch of random explosives. Why? Because he and his brother Mock are planning to blow open their very first safe. And here's something important to know. Giddy is a little person, unlike his brother Mock, who looks like any regular grown man. So, Giddy finishes building the bomb, sets it up, and boom, the safe blows open. He was always the brains behind the plan, while Mock was the one who carried it out. Once the door's off, Mock starts working the combination until he finally cracks it. And just like that, they pull off their first heist. Thing is, Mock doesn't even like stealing. He's clearly uncomfortable with the whole thing. But for Giddy, this is like his favorite hobby. At first, no one in their family believed they actually did it, until they saw the money in their hands. Just then, they hear a car pulling up. It's their mom, and she's with her boyfriend Glenn. And it's not just any random day, it's Thanksgiving. But the celebration is short-lived because when they get out of the car, Glenn is bleeding. He's been shot in the leg. Before their mom even has a chance to explain what happened, they hear police sirens getting closer. In a panic, their mom grabs Glenn and tells the boys she has to run before the cops catch them. Giddy and Mock beg her to take them with her, but she refuses. She tells them she doesn't want to use them like tools, asks them to look after each other, and says goodbye. Seconds later, police cars come flying in, but somehow, their mom manages to escape. And while they're on the run, Glenn swallows the jewels they stole. Not just any jewels. We're talking super rare, insanely valuable gems. The news spreads fast. The papers report the theft of jewelry worth $4 million, and soon Giddy and Mock's faces are plastered everywhere with a reward for anyone who turns them in. Years go by, and Giddy and Mock grow up. They're still pulling off robberies, still chasing that life. But then, 25 years later, something wild happens. The newspapers bring the story back. The stolen jewels, their mom and Glenn still missing. No trace of them. Now we see Giddy and Mock again. They're sitting in their car, dressed in disguises, prepping for yet another heist. But Mock? He's fed up. He doesn't want to do this anymore. Giddy, on the other hand, is trying to calm him down and promises, again, that this will be the last job. Mock loses it. He tells Giddy that he says that every time. And even though he hates it, he's too scared to leave Giddy alone. They both start wondering out loud why their mom left them all those years ago. Why she never came back, or even checked in once. They finally get out of the car and sneak into a factory to rob it. But there are security cameras everywhere, recording them from the moment they step inside. Mock cracks the code on the safe again, and Giddy's thrilled when it opens. Giddy tells Mock to go start the car while he grabs the money. But just as Giddy is loading the cash, a security guard shows up. Giddy freezes, about to surrender. But Mock runs in and hits the guard over the head, knocking him out. Now the alarm's been triggered. They take off running, but it's too late. Police cars surround the place. Giddy has no choice but to surrender, while Mock manages to escape at the last second. Fast forward 5 years later, and we see Giddy in prison, getting ready to leave. One of the inmates is shocked, asking how he's getting out early. Giddy just smiles and says he's getting released for good behavior. Nobody really believes it, but Giddy insists he's done with crime and ready to turn his life around. Officer Farvel comes in to handle his release paperwork. On their way out, Farvel lets him know he'll still be under surveillance. Then Giddy casually asks for Farvel's father's address. Apparently, his dad is the judge who approved Giddy's early release. Giddy wants to send him a thank you fruit basket. But here's the real story. Giddy had secretly slipped a forged release paper into the stack of files the judge was reviewing. Total scam. And somehow it worked. Farvel is suspicious, but Giddy promises not to mess up. He says he's going to stay clean, do things right. Then Farvel tells his assistant to hurry up the process. Once the assistant leaves, Farvel grabs Giddy and tells him he better answer his calls immediately. So, plot twist, Giddy made a deal with Farvel. In exchange for helping Giddy get out early, Farvel expects to get a cut of the next big job, specifically, a share of the rare jewels. He even hands Giddy a phone to keep their secret contact going. Meanwhile, we cut to Mock. He's now living a normal life, working a steady job, happily married. His wife reminds him about picking up stuff for their baby gender reveal party. It's sweet. Mock tells her he's even up for a promotion soon. He's been showing up on time. No trouble, just trying to live straight. But then everything goes sideways. Mock shows up at work, and his boss fires him on the spot. Mock is shocked and begs for a second chance, explaining that his wife is pregnant and they really need the money. But the boss is cold about it. He says the labor department called asking about employees with criminal records. Once they found out Mock had a history, they ordered his termination. Heartbroken, Mock asks at least to let him buy the party supplies from the restaurant. The boss agrees, but only if he he pays for them. Mock heads home, unsure how to break the news to his wife. And as soon as he walks in, he gets another surprise. Giddy is sitting in his house. Mock pulls him aside into the backyard, trying to keep his wife from finding out Giddy was ever in prison. So after all that, Giddy realizes Mock is still mad at him, not because of the crimes, but because during all those years Giddy spent in prison, Mock never visited him. Not once. Didn't even call. Mock tries to explain himself. He says his lawyer told him to stay away from court entirely, so his name wouldn't come up in the case. Then he asks the question that's been on his mind this whole time. How did Giddy even get out of prison early? That's when Giddy spills the tea. He made a secret deal with a corrupt cop named Farvel, whose dad, conveniently, is a judge. The deal? Giddy would help them pull off a job and give them half of what he makes, in exchange for his early release. Giddy explains that the heist is super easy. Just a simple hit on a clothing store that's loaded with cash and located far from the city. Nothing risky, but Mock isn't buying it. He's got a house now, a wife, and a baby on the way. He tells Giddy flat out that he's not willing to risk everything for another robbery. Still, Giddy begs him to at least stay for the gender reveal party, pretend everything's fine so his wife doesn't catch on. He even tries to tempt Mock by saying his cut of the job would be $1 million. But Mock stands his ground and says no. Later, the party starts. Mock welcomes his wife's family, and Giddy starts telling everyone these childhood stories about him and his brother, embarrassing ones of course. Everyone's just kind of awkwardly listening, not sure what to make of it. Then Giddy meets Mock's brother-in-law, and they sit down to have a drink. But Mock sees them and snaps. He runs over and starts chasing Giddy around the yard, shouting at him and trying to punch him. It gets so chaotic that Mock's wife ends up spraying them both with water to break it up. Total disaster. She's furious and tells Mock he ruined the party. Mock tries to apologize and says he just doesn't want Giddy staying with them anymore. He's trying to protect the new life they've built. But his wife sees right through it. She reminds Mock that they both made mistakes in their past, but they've changed. And now, with their daughter on the way, they need to focus on the future, not get dragged back into old messes. Mock finally opens up. He tells her the truth, that Giddy just got out of prison. Meanwhile, Giddy heads back to his place and finds a message from his mom asking if he's seen his brother yet. He also sees a bunch of missed calls from Farvel. And just as he's processing all this, Farvel himself shows up and attacks him out of nowhere. He drags Giddy into the bathtub and starts beating him up for ignoring his calls. Giddy tries to explain that he was out to dinner and forgot his phone, but Farvel isn't having it. He pulls out a gun, forces Giddy to touch it to get his fingerprints on it, then threatens to hand it over to the police if Giddy doesn't follow through with the job. And just to make sure the message is clear, Farvel smacks him across the face, knocking him out cold. Next thing we know, Giddy's waking up Mock. Mock's in shock when he hears what happened and finds out it was Farvel who did it. Giddy tells him there's no way out of this. If they don't do the job, Farvel will make sure they both go down. Mock is torn, but he agrees to go along with it. He asks Giddy where the safe they're supposed to rob is, and Giddy tells him they'll need to travel for a couple of days to pull off the heist. Mock calls his wife and tells her he and Giddy are going to visit their aunt, who's really sick. She tells him to be back in time for Thanksgiving, and he promises. On the road, Mock finally confesses something. He never actually talked to a lawyer. The truth is, he just didn't want to reconnect with Giddy. He couldn't handle it, not after everything Giddy did. Giddy says he already knew. Eventually, they reach the city and rent a room at a hotel. At the same time, Farvel shows up at Giddy's apartment looking for him. When he doesn't find him there, he gets suspicious. He tries calling, but realizes Giddy left the phone in the bathroom. Now Farvel's out for blood. The next day, Giddy tells Mock he met a girl online and wants to go meet her in person. Mock thinks it's a terrible idea. They're on a deadline and need to get the job done fast so he can get back to his wife. But Giddy insists, begging him to come along. Mock eventually gives in. Meanwhile, Farvel returns to his dad, the judge, and confesses that Giddy escaped. He reassures him though, saying he's got leverage. The gun with Giddy's fingerprints is still with him, and that's his way of keeping Giddy under control. Back to Giddy and Mock. They arrive at the girl's house, and things get weird fast. Mock immediately senses something's off, especially when he finds out the girl owns a pet monkey. Yeah, she's definitely not all there. While Giddy sits with her, he manages to steal her work ID badge. Meanwhile, the monkey starts getting a little too friendly with Mock, and Mock panics and bolts out of the house. Giddy runs after him, and they both take off, laughing like kids. That night, Mock finds the girl's work badge and Giddy's stuff. Curious, he asks what the name of the clothing store they're supposed to rob is. Giddy says it out loud, and Mock freezes. It's the same place the girl works. That's why Giddy stole her ID. Mock starts digging through Giddy's stuff and finds a piece of paper, a whole plan for the heist. But that's not even the worst part. He also finds messages from their mom and realizes Giddy had been in contact with her for a long time. He reads the latest message and finally puts it all together. Their mom and Giddy planned this entire heist together. Just then, Giddy walks out of the bathroom and sees the messages in Mock's hand. hand. He knows Mock found out. He tries to explain, says their mom wasn't in touch before because she knew how explosive Mock could be. But Mock loses it. He trashes the room, grabs his clothes, and storms out. Giddy runs after him, begging him to listen. But Mock calls him a liar and says there is no heist, no jewelry, nothing. That's when Mock sees her, their mom, standing in the hallway. Turns out, she's been staying in the room next door the whole time. They go to a nightclub to talk. Mock confronts her, asking how she could disappear for 30 years without ever checking on them. She explains everything. Back on the day of the robbery, Glenn swallowed the jewels so the cops couldn't find them. She managed to escape, but Glenn died on the way. She had no choice but to bury him in an abandoned field and mark the spot. She tells them she wanted to come back, but the police never stopped looking for her. She had to keep running from country to country, always hiding. Now, she's back because she's dying. Mock asks her why she really came back, and she looks at Giddy. That's when they learn the truth. She has cancer and doesn't have long to live. Mock leaves the table and goes into the bathroom. Giddy follows him and finally comes clean. The big job he was talking about? It's not a store. It's Glenn's grave. The jewels he swallowed are still buried with him, and now they're worth a fortune. Giddy says he's already planned everything, but they need all three of them, him, Mock, and their mom, to make it work. At first, Mock refuses, but Giddy reminds him about his wife and the baby. If he wants to secure their future, this is the way. He promises it'll be quick and easy. All they have to do is dig up Glenn's body and take the jewels. Finally, Mock agrees, and in the weirdest moment yet, the three of them start singing and dancing together like old times. The next day, they get in the car and head straight to the spot where Glenn is buried. Alright, now things start heating up. While all this is going down, Farfel tracks down Geddy's girlfriend. Turns out, he found her location through the letters she used to send him in prison. And guess what? She works in a factory. At the same time, Mock disguises himself as her, sneaks into the factory, and steals a digging machine. Meanwhile, Geddy and their mom are already waiting in the car, and the moment he shows up, they all head out to the burial site where Glenn's body is hidden. The mom points Mock to the exact spot, and he starts digging. Eventually, they find the body. Well, what's left of it? It's just a skeleton now. Geddy tells Mock to reach into the skeleton's stomach to grab the jewels Glenn swallowed years ago. Mock's completely disgusted, but he puts on gloves and does it anyway. And bingo, he finds the jewels. Geddy takes the gloves off him and grabs the gems. But just then, a group of angry landowners show up and start chasing them in golf carts. Mock floors it, driving through the field, swerving and dodging, until he finally manages to throw them off by crashing them into a tractor. Later that night, they bury Glenn properly in a new spot. Geddy's so hyped, he starts rambling a bit, and Mock suddenly realizes something. From what Geddy says, he figures out that Geddy impersonated someone from the employment agency and called the restaurant where Mock worked just to get him fired. Basically, Geddy pushed him into doing this heist. Furious, Mock storms off, not wanting anything to do with his brother. Their mom tries to comfort him, but it's too much. Suddenly, Farfel attacks. He jumps Geddy and starts beating him, demanding the location of the jewels. Geddy tosses the glove, the one he used to hold the jewels, far away and lies, says they couldn't find anything. But Farfel's not buying it. He needs those jewels to prove himself to his father, the judge. Without them, he's just another failure. He ties up Geddy, and when Mock hears the commotion, he rushes back to help, only to get tied up too. Farfel pulls a gun and threatens them both, demanding they give up the jewels. Then, out of nowhere, their mom grabs the jewels and runs. She ditches both her sons and disappears, leaving them tied up. Mock's heartbroken. That moment confirms everything he feared. She never truly cared about them, only about herself. Later, in a car with Farfel, Mock manages to kick him in the head and knock him out. They dump him on the road and escape. Mock quickly figures out where their mom went, a jewelry dealer. She's trying to sell the gems. Before she can leave with the cash, Mock and Geddy arrive and confront her. She insists the money is hers and makes a run for it. Now it's a full-on chase. They're running after her, and Farfel is now tailing all of them, gun in hand. Thanks to the GPS in his car, he found them again. They all end up inside a huge shopping mall. Mock tries to snatch the bag of cash from his mom, and she falls to the ground. Geddy grabs the bag, but just as he tries to escape, here comes Farfel again, shooting wildly. Mall security calls the cops, who show up fast. They demand the shooter surrender. Geddy quickly comes up with a plan. He stuffs a pepper spray can inside the bag and sets it near Farfel. Then, he and Mock start arguing in front of him to distract him. Farfel, totally confused, demands they throw him the bag. Just as he opens it, boom, the pepper spray hits his eyes. In the chaos, he accidentally fires his gun, which hits a gas line. Massive explosion. Geddy and Mock grab the bag and run. But with the police outside, they're stuck. That's when their mom does something unexpected. She tells them about a back exit and gives them the bag of money. Then, she takes the blame, walks out, and surrenders to the police. Mock and Geddy are stunned. For the first time, she chose them over herself. Later, they split the cash. Mock uses his share to pay off the judge judge, Farfel's dad, to make sure Getty stays out of prison. And the judge? He couldn't care less about his dead son. Cold as ice. Back home, Mock reunites with his wife in time for Thanksgiving. Getty joins them, and Mock tells him he's welcome to stay. And then comes the biggest surprise. Getty reveals he deposited his share of the money into a savings account for Mock's daughter, Blueberry. Mock's blown away. Fast forward a year, baby Blueberry is born, and the whole gang, Mock, his wife, Getty, all go visit their mom in prison to celebrate Thanksgiving. Getty says this is the best Thanksgiving he's had since he was a kid. Before they leave, their mom asks Mock if she can hold the baby for a moment. He hesitates, but eventually hands her over. Then, as Getty's leaving with the baby, he pauses and tells Mock one last thing. He saw what happened back there. Turns out, their mom didn't sell all the jewels. She secretly kept 3 of them. And when she held Blueberry, she slipped them into Getty's hand. He shows them to Mock, and for once, they both just smile. And that's how our wild, chaotic, unexpectedly heartfelt story comes to an end.